Hello, I'm Joel Baird, the General Manager of Missoula Community Access Television, inviting you to another edition of What's Up Missoula. This program profiles civic and local nonprofit groups. Today we're going to visit with two people involved in bringing justice to all Montanans who need legal work. We're going to visit with Amy Sings in the Timber and Klaus Sitte. Klaus Sitte is associated with the Montana Legal Services Association. Amy Sings in the Timber is with the Montana Justice Foundation. Welcome, both of you, and thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Oh, you're most welcome. Well, Amy, we're going to turn to you first, because I know you've explained to me before we started the program that the Montana Justice Foundation creates the energy for the program, does the fundraising, gets the people invested in the cause, and Klaus's organization, the Montana Legal Services Association, actually provides the attorneys, the people who need it.
That's right.
So first we turn our attention to the Montana Justice Foundation, and Amy brought with her these wonderful banners that also describe, to a degree, some of the function of the organization. But yes, the first question, the when and the how, and even you could throw in the why, but I'm sure we're going to get to that.
Sure.
It's a Montana Justice Foundation, so a statewide organization.
Right. That's
Where
correct.
does it come from?
Well, the foundation was founded in 1979 by members of the State Bar of Montana to serve as the charitable arm of Montana's legal community. Since its inception, judges, attorneys, and other members of the legal community have given of their time, resources, and finances to, in an effort to give back to their profession and to really make a positive difference in the lives of low-income Montanans.
And this is something, I always try to put myself in the mind of the average viewer, right? So when we, the ordinary public, hear the bar, it always creates in our minds, I think, like, he was disbarred, or if you say the Bar Association. But could you explain to people, what is the Bar Association? Yeah.
Well, Montana has a unified bar, and it's a mandatory unified bar. So if you are a practicing attorney in the state of Montana, you belong to the State Bar of Montana.
The State Bar. It's the Bar Association, and it's a group that unifies all of the state's lawyers. Do judges belong to a bar association?
Yes, most do. Some are, there's a difference between practicing and non-practicing attorneys, but we all pay our dues.
Except for the
at
judges.
Levels.
Oh, yeah. So it's kind of like a union.
Right.
It's a benevolent organization, and it's a union, and it's the collection of lawyers. And it's also the regulatory authority.
Right.
So it's really a strong connection between everyone interested in the law, practicing, non-practicing attorneys for the entire state.
Right.
Okay, got it. And this is almost like the Police Boys Benevolent Association in a way, that it's this group of people all in the same profession coming together, and they're providing this very necessary service.
Right. We're the philanthropic arm of Montana's legal community.
Yeah.
So essentially what our mission is to provide funding and support for nonprofit organizations that are dedicated to ensuring that all Montanans, especially the vulnerable and underserved populations, have meaningful access to the civil justice system.
Right. And before we started taping too, you said, now we need to make this distinction, right? Because when we were putting up your banners, I was thinking, well, doesn't the state constitution, the federal constitution, something seem to require, if you do not have the funds for an attorney shall be appointed for you, the public defender. And this public defender system, in which anyone accused of a crime is given representation, doesn't apply to civil cases.
That's correct.
And so that leaves a huge gap in the funding of the legal system.
Right. There is no right to legal representation for civil legal matters. Civil legal matters are it's any legal matter not involving a crime. Some examples include landlord-tenant issues, family law issues, consumer protection, and the like. So for these types of cases, there's no
recourse.
Right. Right, unless you have the funds to hire legal representation.
And strong examples of that people can imagine of this. A working class family feels they're being treated unfairly by their landlord, but the landlord is a propertied person, and they say, oh, you must get out or I'll bring my attorney down upon you.
Right.
And this family thinks, well, this isn't right. What can we do? We can't afford an attorney.
Right.
where do they go? And so the Montana Justice Foundation tries to provide answers for a tough question like that.
Right. The Justice Foundation provides funding and support services to legal aid organizations and other access to justice initiatives in the state of Montana. The Justice Foundation itself is not a legal service provider. We provide referrals to legal service organizations such as the Montana
Legal Services Association, and Klaus is the executive director,
Correct.
and you can speak to some of that. And here you mentioned partly the need, and I don't think anyone watching necessarily needs to be reminded, but we're kind of a poor state. I mean, we do okay, but we're a poor state. And you've got some statistics. I don't know if you memorized them.
I do. Yeah, there are presently about a little over 130,000 Montanans living at or below federal poverty level. And then there are another 150,000 or so that live just above that mark. And of course, every day, especially in this economic environment, you know, it's more and more of the middle class folks who join the ranks of the working poor.
Well, and anyone who knows how politicized that definition of poverty is, you know, that it's being kept, you know, at a certain level that is not necessarily reflective of reality. So when you say that 150,000 hovering around the people are pretty poor, let's face it, there's no other way around it. I mean, the people are pretty poor. So there's an acute need in the state to have something like this for people to face those civil legal challenges with some kind of resources.
Absolutely. You know, many Montanans are just effectively denied access to the civil justice system simply because they're poor.
They can't afford it.
They cannot afford legal representation.
And this can lead to other things too. If people are in a custody battle, if they're in a difficult divorce situation.
Right.
There's another civil case where this guarantee of the public defender is actually the Constitution didn't take that into account.
Right. There have been many state initiatives trying to push for a guarantee of legal representation or the right to legal representation in certain civil legal matters, those matters that pertain to what we think of as inalienable rights, parenting rights and the like. But we're very far behind the times in that regard.
Oh, I see. Now, Klaus, you're here because the Montana Legal Services Association is the Montana Justice Foundation's largest grantee.
That's correct.
And you are ready to provide us with some background about the organization and the work. And I'll mention to the viewers that Philip is going to put underneath there some contact information for the Montana Legal Services Association. There's an 866, I'm going to read it from here because my eyesight's not that good, 686-4574, and that's a toll-free number.
It is.
But I'm going to let you talk, you know, and give a little background on the Legal Services Association. I just wanted people to know that there is that resource directly out there that they can call.
Yeah. And as Amy said, we're the largest grantee from the Justice Foundation, and we really rely on that resource in order to continue to provide services. And as you know, as you mentioned, the poverty statistics, we've kind of held them in check. And as much as we have with low-income folks over the last 30, 40 years. So as a result, we don't have the ability to provide all of the access that we'd like to because there just aren't enough resources out there. When I started with legal services 35 years ago, we had 39 legal services attorneys in Montana. Now we have about 15, depending on what kind of funding we have. So, and they all try to call on a full moon Monday. You know, it's busy. The holidays are a busy time for us. We've been around for 40 years, but we've never really gotten back to that level that we were at in the early 70s. And so that's been a struggle for us. But people generally try to call us using that 800 number. When they call us, they'll get our helpline, as it's called. One of our intake specialists will then determine whether they're within the poverty standard, if it's the kind of case we can represent them in, if there's something we can do, and then set them up with an appointment. Generally within 3 days, they'll get an appointment. And then they'll talk to a paralegal or one of our attorneys that will give them some advice or assistance. If the case needs more work, depending on what it is, domestic violence, for example, in a custody battle, then it'll be sent to one of our specialty units that may, in fact,
provide direct representation. A lot of the stuff we do is try to get people in the right direction, point them in the right direction, maybe even train them to represent themselves in court that we do. We do a lot of that. We do classes all over the state, many by video, so that people can watch and learn and then represent themselves, argue their own case in justice court, for example, or in small claims court, to make sure that the landlord doesn't try to evict them.
Oh, right. So it informs people as to what their rights are, and it
Exactly.
tries to orient them a little to the legal system. This is how it works. These are the steps that are taken.
Right, yeah.
So that's very empowering.
It
for
is.
people.
And that's the whole point, is that people can do a lot of this themselves if, in fact, they have the right resources, and we
Yeah.
try to give them those resources, yeah.
Oh, that's excellent. And I wanted to tell people watching that you needn't be shy at this time of year if you want to make a donation, that you can go to the Montana Justice Foundation website. There, they'd probably find information. Are you doing okay? How is it going in the fundraising?
Well, I will say, right now, because the economy is the way it is, there's a lot of speculation and scare around charitable organizations
Yeah.
and what's going to happen in this time. I am incredibly pleased to say that our private giving is up at this time, which says a lot about Montanans. I
Yeah, it
think.
does.
The other piece to that, though, is the Justice Foundation is also the administrator of a statewide program, the Interest on Lawyers Trusts Account Program. And the trust account program relies heavily on favorable interest rates that financial institutions pay, which, as you can imagine,
Not bad.
the most recent rate cut is for the Fed funds is down to 0.
Yeah.
So IOLTA has taken a huge hit
Oh.
from one fiscal year to the next. We are right now down about 56%
Wow.
of IOLTA dollars under last year.
Mhm.
And we're, slated to face hundreds of thousands more in the coming months. So in one regard,
It's really
very,
good.
very
People are being
encouraged.
generous,
Right,
and they're
very
not getting too
encouraged.
frightened not to donate. Because we're hearing that a lot on this program, as you can imagine. Ellie Hill was here from the Poverello last
Yeah,
week,
right.
and there is just this sense of uncertainty that people are going to panic, and just as they're afraid to buy things, they're also afraid to give this stuff away.
That's right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So we're, in one regard, very encouraged by
Yeah.
the generosity of Montanans, and in the other regard, really relying more heavily on the generosity of Montanans in
Oh, I'll
order to
bet.
make up for some of the other hits that we're experiencing.
Yeah. Well, and I just wanted to mention again to people, don't be shy. If this is important to you, and you can learn probably quite a bit by visiting both websites. The Montana Justice Foundation is the fundraising arm, and you identify where best to put your resources to accomplish your mission of providing justice for all people across the income and identity spectrum. And then if you want to look at the Montana Legal Services Association, the website is www.montanalawhelp.org. Oh, I see it's on the top
Yeah,
of
it's
the
yeah.
screen. Okay, aside from Montana Legal Services Association, who else benefits from the Justice Foundation?
So the Justice Foundation is a statewide supporter of legal services and access to justice initiatives. Aside from Montana Legal Services Association, we support local legal aid clinics, court-appointed special advocates.
And that's the CASA,
right,
acronym.
CASA.
Mm.
And community mediation centers and domestic violence education and service providers across the states.
Oh, that's really great. I know in Missoula we have the YWCA, for instance, and there is a mediation center, I think,
Right.
associated with Jeanette Rankin Peace Center.
There
used to
is,
be.
one of our grantees here in Missoula is the Community Dispute Resolution
Yeah,
Center
that's what
of
I'm thinking
Missoula.
of. ART,
It's a
RD.
mouthful.
Yeah.
It's the CDRC.
Yes, the CDRC.
Right.
Oh, and I see since 1985, the foundation has contributed over $4 million to qualified statewide access to justice programs.
That's correct.
See, and I'm just going to make this observation that it really is a testament to the generosity of people in the legal profession, because there can be those evil jokes about lawyers and so on. But I mean, it is so often misplaced. I'll just make that observation because it's Christmas time.
Sure.
You know, when I know friends that are in the legal, they want justice, and that's a very interesting concept.
And it's a strong motivator for
Isn't
people
it,
to
though?
provide services.
Mhm.
We rely a lot on the private bar to do what we call pro bono services.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that.
And we are constantly looking for more, of course, but we've just had a banner year of involvement by the private bar, donating time and resources to helping people that can't help themselves.
Yeah.
They do it through a program usually that we sponsor or coordinate,
Nate, and that
gets the word out, so to speak, and more lawyers are volunteering to do some of those cases, yeah.
Oh, that is really great. And I think it is really important to people, like when people are in a bind, when they're in a custody battle, when they're fighting over property, when something has happened that they feel is not right, the importance of going through the process of the justice system, of having mediation where the parties finally pin themselves down because of the great ceremony, like this one's on the line and that one's on the line, and it's a party call and money's being offered. But it is such a weight off the people's shoulders
Right.
when something like that that's been going on for years and years is finally cleared up and it becomes real. Because when people are in tough situations, the possibilities and the outrage, and I've heard people rehearse stuff. I'm just going from, experience with it. Oh, well, they said this and that. When it's finally done, they're so much happier all around.
Well, that's a really good point, Joel, because I think what we're looking at most of the time when people call us, they are in crisis. They're not going to call a law office
Right.
because they're happy,
Right.
Something's going on, and usually it's they've either been sued, they've been evicted, they've gotten a notice from their spouse that they're going through a custody battle.
Right.
Lots of other kinds, or they've been maybe some kind of consumer ripoff of
Yeah.
some sort, and that's when they call us. So when they're at the
The people are really in pain. It's a particular kind of agony to think something wrong has been done and there's no answer for it.
Right.
And the system actually works, I think, in that sense, that when adults get together and they get this help that from the legal system, it makes the resolution real. And without that, there's a certain sense of clenched fist chaos. There's no, what do they call that in therapy or something? Closure. That's it.
I just think everybody, we want to feel like we truly have the voice we're told that we have.
Yeah.
That equal justice for all isn't just a saying, that it's a reality, and that it's everybody's responsibility, not just those of the members of the legal community. It's everybody's responsibility to make that a reality.
Yeah.
Every day we see on television, in newspapers, in our own lives, serious issues: homelessness, hunger, lack of access to medical care, abuse, discrimination, inequality, and basically the civil justice system is there to provide remedy and redress for these types of issues.
Right.
Without being able to have access to the civil justice system, there is no equal justice for all.
So it's a very strong underpinning of our assumptions about the society in which we live,
Right.
That's
this
correct.
equality issue. So it's wonderful work to address.
Well, and particularly at this time of the year, we've had this cold weather.
Yeah.
Lots of people are facing housing issues when
Yeah.
when their landlord isn't providing adequate heat, or the water freezes or something like
Yes.
that. What are you going to do? You have to have some ability to level the playing field, and
Right.
unfortunately that often means a lawyer. And
Right.
often it means going to court and
Yeah.
and just explaining to the landlord that they have this duty often doesn't do it. They'll need a little bit of clout, and
Right.
that's leveling that playing field is very important.
Let me think. We kind of covered our thing very much. Well, now what can local supporters do to help? Because you have a bit here and a little more than we touched on that people could do.
Right. One of the things that's incredibly important is if you're watching right now and you find these issues to be important, talk to your friends and family about them. Many people just aren't aware of the
I think
great
you're right,
need
though.
for
You know,
civil legal aid. You
and
can-
that there's a philanthropic arm that would
Right.
actually take money in and distribute it.
Right, and you can visit our website to learn more about the Justice Foundation, about our grantee organizations, and about the Access to Justice cause in general. We have information on there about what's going on locally. We have information about the Access to Justice movement nationwide. So, those are some things that you can do. Another thing that's incredibly important is write your local representative. Let them know that you find access to justice to be important. It's important to you. And of course, if you're so positioned, make periodic charitable donations to the Montana Justice Foundation to support legal aid in your community.
Great. Anything to add, Tom?
I would underscore all of it. There's
Gotcha.
a tremendous need out there. We turn away about 3 out of every 5 callers.
Oh, yeah.
And that means that those people don't have another resource. They might be able to do it on their own, but there's still a big need out there, and we need additional help. And the only way you can get some of that help is by the support of the Justice Foundation.
Great. Well, thank you both so much
Thank
for
you.
coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're most welcome. If you want to learn more, there is the 800 number for the Montana Legal Services Association. So if you have a direct need, there it is to call. And for the Montana Justice Foundation, there is the website www.mtjustice.org. Well, thank you so much for tuning in to this edition of What's Up Missoula. If you know of a group you'd like to see on this program, give us a call. At MCAT, the number is 542-6228. For MCAT, I'm Joel Baird. Thanks for watching.